Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into the surprisingly cozy world of Ottoman winter fashion. Picture this, you trudge through a snow-dusted Istanbul street in the 16th century, wrapped in layers of silks, furs, and embroidered caftans that somehow manage to be both warm and stunningly stylish. You probably won't survive this cold without the right wardrobe, and the Ottomans knew it turns out staying warm was just as much about power and prestige as about practicality. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Maybe we'll share some warmth through the screen. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Ottoman Empire, sprawling from the scorching deserts of Arabia to the snowy mountains of eastern Anatolia, faced a unique challenge every winter: how to keep thousands of people warm without sacrificing style or status. The empire's vastness meant winter wasn't a one-size-fits-all ordeal. You're not just bundling up for cold, you're navigating social cues, religious expectations, and the complexities of court fashion, all while battling winds that slice like a scimitar. You trudge through the bustling bazaars where merchants shout over the clatter of horse hooves and the smell of roasting chestnuts. Fur-lined caftans hang heavily on the shoulders of the wealthy, shimmering in the winter sun. Around you, the patchwork of climates means that what's warm enough for a Constantinople winter might be downright insufficient in the snowdrifts of the eastern provinces. This was not just about warmth, it was political armor. Fashion was a language here, communicating everything from rank to religious devotion to allegiance. The right garment could mean favor in the Sultan's eyes or a cold shoulder in the marketplace. Historians still argue whether Ottoman winter fashion was primarily about practicality or a show of imperial splendor. But whatever the truth, the garments were crafted with care, and no stitch was wasted. You feel the rough wool of a merchant's cloak brush past your arm, contrasting with the silken sheen of a courtier's undergarment visible beneath his heavy outerwear. You catch a glimpse of a fur hat shaped like a crown, an unmistakable signal of rank. And through the cold, the warm colors of embroidered motifs catch the eye, their patterns almost telling stories of the lands and peoples they represent. The climate shaped the fashion, but so did trade routes, threading through the empire like veins of silk and spice. Fabrics from Persia, dyes from India, and furs from Siberia found their way into Ottoman wardrobes, blending utility with luxury in unexpected ways. This vast, chilly empire had to invent ways to stay warm while looking impeccably elegant. And as you're about to find out, some of those secrets are just a little quirky, like a winter fashion hack you'd never expect in the 1500s. So bundle up and let's unravel the layers of the Ottoman winter wardrobe, starting with how they mastered the art of layering and luxury. You step deeper into the fabric of Ottoman winter life, where layering isn't just about piling on clothes, but an art form, a subtle dance between warmth, comfort, and of course, looking fabulous enough to turn heads in any bazaar or palace corridor. The cold in Ottoman winters can bite sharply. Think of a damp chill that sneaks under your cloak and freezes your bones. So the first rule of Ottoman winter fashion: layer up, but do it with style. Imagine you're putting on a few garments, each one carefully chosen for its texture, thickness, and decorative appeal. Underneath a linen or cotton shirt, the base layer soft against your skin, breathable and just enough to keep moisture away. Next comes a silk or brocade tunic, a bit thicker with long sleeves and intricate patterns embroidered along the cuffs and hems. Silk might seem fancy for cold weather, but it traps heat surprisingly well, especially when worn under heavier coats. You drape a caftan over that, a signature Ottoman winter staple. It's thick, often lined with fur, but it's also your canvas. Ottoman textiles are famous for their rich colors and detailed embroidery. The caftan isn't just a coat, it's a statement. Some have gold thread woven into the fabric, others boast motifs like tulips or carnation symbols with deep cultural meaning. The layering lets you balance warmth and the need to impress. You might think piling on that many layers would look bulky and awkward, but Ottoman tailors had clever tricks to keep things flattering. Waist-cinching belts, strategic cuts, and the way fabrics drape mean you're never just a walking marshmallow. Here's a quirky tidbit under the layers. Some wore padded vests stuffed with cotton or wool, not just for insulation, but also as subtle armor. This wasn't armor you'd see in a museum, but a kind of everyday protective padding that gave you warmth and some extra cushion if a scuffle broke out in a crowded caravanserai. Historians still argue whether this padding was standard among all classes or mostly limited to soldiers and courtiers preparing for the unpredictable winter streets of Constantinople. Either way, it's an early example of fashion meeting function in a surprisingly modern way. Beyond the physical warmth, layering also serves social and religious functions. The number and quality of layers you wore could signal your status and piety. For instance, Sufi mystics favored simpler underlayers with subdued colors, while the elite would pile on silks, velvets, and furs. You learn quickly that winter fashion is a complex language. The fabrics you choose, how many layers you wear, and even how you fold or fasten your garments speak volumes without a word. And then there's the subtle aroma of the fabrics themselves. You notice the faint scent of rosewater and musk often sprinkled on winter cloaks to mask the less glamorous smells of dampness or crowded bazaars. It's a small detail, but in close quarters, those little fragrant touches made all the difference. You can't help but chuckle thinking how this is the Ottoman version of put on layers and look good, doing it like a 16th century fashion influencer, advising you through the cold. Next up, you'll meet the star player of Ottoman winter fashion, the kaftan itself, that versatile, cozy, and regal garment that somehow manages to be both functional armor and runway ready. You slip your arms into the kaftan, the very emblem of Ottoman winter fashion, as familiar to the empire's elites as a trusty winter coat is to us today. It's more than just clothing. It's a symbol, a wearable tapestry of power, artistry, and practical warmth all rolled into one. The kaftan is a long flowing robe often made from rich silks or velvets and lined or trimmed with luxurious furs. You feel the soft brush of velvet against your skin as you adjust the broad sleeves embroidered in gold and silver threads that catch the light like tiny stars. It's heavy, but the weight settles comfortably like a hug from history itself. Historically, the kaftan originated in Central Asia, brought westward by the Turks and adapted over centuries. By the time of the Ottomans, it had evolved into a complex garment with layers, collars, and linings designed specifically for winter use. The outer fabric was often imported silk, dazzling in jewel tones, emerald, sapphire, ruby colors, carefully chosen to symbolize wealth and status. You notice the elaborate embroidery decorating the edges, delicate flowers and vines interwoven with symbols like the tulip, a favorite motif representing paradise on earth. Some kaftans had patterns so fine they almost seemed painted rather than sewn. They served as both insulation and a visual feast. One quirky fact, some kaftans were lined with squirrel fur, a surprising choice given the animal's small size and relatively thin coat. But Ottoman furriers prized squirrel fur for its soft texture and lightweight warmth, perfect for the dynamic lifestyle of a rider or courtier who needed flexibility as well as insulation. Historians still argue whether the elaborate embroidery and layering of furs was purely decorative, or if it served secret practical functions like hiding small pockets or reinforcing seams to better withstand the rigors of winter travel. Some even suggest certain patterns had symbolic warmth charms, though, that edges into the realm of folk belief. Wearing a kaftan also meant following strict etiquette. You learned quickly that the length, fabric, and color conveyed everything from your rank to your mood. A sultan's kaftan was a masterpiece, custom-made with the finest materials often gifted by foreign dignitaries. Commoners could wear kaftans too, but their versions were simpler and made from coarser cloth. The way you tied your sash, usually a wide embroidered belt called a kamarband, was also crucial. Too loose and your warm layers would shift uncomfortably. Too tight and you'd restrict your movement. Plus, the sash was often a canvas for small daggers or pouches, blending fashion with functionality. You catch a whiff of a faint earthy scent lingering on the silk. Natural dyes made from plants like madder root and indigo not only colored the fabric but subtly perfumed it. These dyes were prized and expensive, adding another layer of status to the garment. A modern aside, think of the kaftan as the Ottoman version of that one winter jacket everyone wants, stylish enough for a holiday party, warm enough to survive a blizzard, and special enough to make your ex regret leaving you. With your caftan on, you're ready to explore the Empire's winter secrets further. Next up, the fur that made all the difference when temperatures plunged. You shift your weight feeling the reassuring warmth of fur against your skin, because no Ottoman winter outfit was complete without it. Furs weren't just cozy accessories, they were essential armor against the biting cold, and they came with surprising variety and symbolism. Imagine sliding your hand over the soft, thick pelts of otter marten or sable, the prized furs of the Ottoman elite. These animals weren't just hunted for their warmth. Their pelts were status symbols signaling wealth and taste. The richer you were, the rarer and more luxurious the fur adorning your caftan or hat. Otter fur with its dense water-resistant coat was a favorite for outerwear, especially in the damp, snowy winters of Istanbul. Marten fur, softer and lighter, was often used for lining collars and cuffs, providing warmth without the bulk. The sables, those luxurious, dark furs, were reserved for the Sultan and his closest court members, their exclusivity comparable to wearing designer labels today. A quirky tidbit: some Ottoman nobles preferred the fur of the Arctic fox, an odd choice given the empire's geography, but thanks to extensive trade networks reaching as far as Siberia, even such exotic pelts could find their way into Istanbul's bazaars. This fur was particularly prized for its striking color variations, white, silver, and even bluish hues that shimmered in the low winter light. But fur wasn't just about comfort or a fashion. It had symbolic weight. Wearing certain furs could indicate political alliances or membership in elite military orders. For example, the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite infantry, sometimes wore fur-lined cloaks as part of their winter gear, signaling both their toughness and their privileged status. Historians still argue whether the fur trade influenced Ottoman foreign policy decisions, given how important these pelts were to the court's wardrobe and economy. Some suggest that acquiring rare furs was as much a diplomatic mission as a commercial one, tied to alliances with Siberian tribes or Russian merchants. You can't help but notice how the fur isn't just an insulating layer, but a tactile luxury. The softness brushing your cheek, the subtle rustle as you move, a sensory reminder of power and protection. On the practical side, fur had a curious property that amazed even early scientists. It doesn't just trap warm air. Some furs can actually repel moisture, keeping the wearer surprisingly dry in snowy conditions. No surprise the Ottomans prized these pelts so highly. As you settle into this warmth, you spot a merchant's son wearing a fur-trimmed hat, his cheeks rosy from the cold. The hat is more than a winter essential. It's a declaration, an Ottoman way of saying, "I'm ready for winter, and I look good doing it." That brings you to your next stop in this chilly journey: headgear, designed to keep the chill off your head, but never off your style game. You pull a fur hat down over your ears, snug and warm, immediately feeling the comforting weight of soft pelts against your skin. Ottoman winter headgear wasn't just about shielding your noggin from the cold. It was a fashion statement, a marker of identity, and sometimes a subtle political signal wrapped up in fur and embroidery. The most famous Ottoman winter hats are the Berk and Kalpak, both shaped to fit the head perfectly while offering maximum warmth. Imagine a hat made from felt or fur, often sheep or fox, sometimes embroidered with gold thread, or adorned with jewels if you're lucky enough to be part of the court. These hats could be tall and proud like the ones you see on Janissary soldiers, or shorter and rounder, more suited for everyday wear in the winter markets. One quirky fact: some winter hats had hidden pockets sewn into their linings, small enough to stash a secret note or a lucky charm, perfect if you're a courier racing through the snowy streets or a noble plotting palace intrigue. Who said cold weather couldn't be mysterious? You notice the subtle differences in design depending on your social status. For the Sultan and his close advisors, hats might be covered with sable fur and embroidered with intricate patterns, sometimes featuring tassels or even feathers. For common folk, simpler felt caps kept heads warm without the fuss. Turban wearing didn't disappear in winter either. In fact, turbans were often wrapped around padded hats or fur caps for extra insulation. The combination made for an unexpected but stylish winter helmet, and some styles incorporated silk linings that kept heads both warm and regal. Historians still argue whether some of the more elaborate headgear designs originated purely from practical needs or if they were primarily ceremonial, meant to intimidate enemies and impress visiting dignitaries during the cold months. The line between function and fashion was blurrier than a snowstorm in Anatolia. Another fun detail, the fur inside the hats wasn't just for warmth. Some wearers believed certain furs had protective properties, warding off evil spirits or illnesses common in the cold season. This folklore, while unproven, added a mystical layer to the winter wardrobe. In the bustling streets of Istanbul, you see merchant soldiers and scholars all sporting their versions of winter headgear, each telling their own story without saying a word. And under those hats, the warmth is not just physical, it's a sense of belonging to a centuries-old tradition of style and survival. Next, as you keep moving through the winter-clad empire, you'll explore what Ottoman feet wore to brave the cold, balancing practicality and elegance in every step. You glance down at your feet, realizing that even in winter, the Ottoman Empire never sacrificed style for warmth, at least not entirely. Ottoman winter footwear was a fascinating blend of practicality, craftsmanship, and yes, flair. Imagine slipping your feet into leather boots that rise just above the ankle, sturdy enough to protect you from icy streets, but flexible enough for riding or quick footwork in a crowded bazaar. These boots were often made from soft tan leather, sometimes dyed rich browns or deep reds. The leather wasn't just durable, it was treated with oils and waxes to repel water and snow. On the inside, you find a lining of thick felt or wool, essential for keeping toes from freezing. Some boots even had insoles stuffed with herbs and dried flowers, not just for scent, but as a folk remedy believed to keep feet warm and healthy through harsh winters. One quirky detail, wealthy Ottomans sometimes had boots embroidered with silver or gold thread. It might seem excessive for footwear that often got muddy or snowy, but in a culture where your appearance was a language, even your boots spoke status. But you don't always wear boots. In the warmer parts of the empire or inside heated palaces, softer slippers made from velvet or silk took their place. These slippers were often padded with wool and could be decorated with pearls or tiny gems. Imagine padding quietly across a stone floor, your feet cozy and your slippers whispering secrets of comfort. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Ottoman footwear styles were influenced by many cultures: Persian, Arab, Central Asian, reflecting the empire's vast reach. You might find boots shaped like those worn by Mongol horsemen, designed to fit snugly into stirrups, or slippers resembling those from Andalusia, soft and ornate. Historians still argue whether certain boot designs were adapted primarily for practical reasons like horseback riding, or if they also served ceremonial purposes during winter festivals and court events. The dual role of footwear as both functional gear and fashion statement is a topic still debated in scholarly circles. Another note, Ottoman shoes were often crafted by guilds with secret techniques passed down for generations. Some say there were special dyes made from local plants that not only colored the leather, but supposedly increased its waterproof qualities. It's hard to tell legend from fact, but it adds a layer of mystique to those finely stitched boots. So with warm feet secured, you're ready to step into the cold streets or glide through palace halls, perfectly balanced between function and finesse. Next, you'll feel the chill turning into warmth as we explore Ottoman winter, outerwear beyond the kaftan, the cloaks and mantles that completed the ensemble. You drape a cloak over your shoulders, the final flourish in your Ottoman winter ensemble, a garment both dramatic and indispensable. These cloaks or antares weren't just cold weather gear. They were a statement, a sweeping gesture that announced your arrival long before you entered a room. Ottoman cloaks were often made from heavy wool, perfect for the chilly winds that whipped across the Bosphorus. Some were lined with fur, turning the cloak into a portable fortress of warmth. Picture yourself wrapped in layers of rich fabric that billow as you walk, the thick wool muffling the sounds of the bustling city and lending a quiet dignity to your steps. Historically, cloaks served many purposes. They were practical for riding, easy to throw on and take off, but they also signaled rank and role within the empire. The Sultan's cloak, richly embroidered with gold thread and trimmed with sable fur, was a work of art crafted by the most skilled artisans in Istanbul. Lower-ranking officials and merchants had simpler versions, but even these cloaks carried subtle signs of identity. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Ottoman cloaks featured hidden pockets sewn deep inside the lining, perfect for stashing secret messages or small valuables while traveling through potentially hostile territories. It's like the original spy jacket minus the modern gadgets. You might be surprised to learn that some cloaks were designed to double as blankets during long winter nights outdoors or on horseback. The thickness and the quality of the wool meant you could curl up beneath one and stay warm until dawn. There's a story about an Ottoman diplomat who survived a freezing night in the mountains, wrapped only in his cloak, which he later presented as proof of its exceptional craftsmanship. Historians still argue whether these cloaks originated from purely local Ottoman designs or were influenced by the medieval Byzantine and Persian traditions that predated the empire. The blend of styles is visible in the patterns, the cut, and even the dyes used. Speaking of dyes, many cloaks showcase deep, vibrant colors, indigo blues, rich reds, and earthy browns. These hues were achieved through natural dyes made from plants, insects, and minerals often harvested from far-flung regions under Ottoman control, adding an exotic touch to your winter wear. You feel the weight of history settle around you with the cloak practical, elegant, and alive with stories of power and survival. As the wind picks up, you pull it tighter and realize that every layer of your Ottoman winter wardrobe tells a story weaving together comfort, status, and a dash of intrigue. Next, your journey takes you to the warmth inside the palace kitchens, where winter spices and hearty recipes kept more than just bodies warm. You step inside the warm, fragrant bustle of an Ottoman palace kitchen, where the cold outside feels miles away. Winter here wasn't just about thick fabrics and furs. It was also about food, and specifically the secret winter recipes and spices that infused warmth deep into the soul. The kitchens are alive with the sizzling sounds of cooking, the sharp clink of copper pots, and the fragrant steam rising from bubbling stews. Spices like cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg fill the air, their aromas mixing with roasted chestnuts and simmering lamb. These weren't just flavors. They were weapons against the winter chill, carefully chosen for their warming properties. Historically, the Ottomans were master traders in spices, bringing them from India, the Spice Islands, and beyond. Winter recipes often featured these spices not only for taste, but for health. Think of a thick, hearty keshkek, a comforting wheat and meat stew spiced with cinnamon and black pepper, served piping hot to stave off the cold. One quirky fact, some Ottoman winter dishes included unusual ingredients like dried rose petals or pomegranate molasses, which added both a surprising tartness and a bit of festive cheer to meals. These flavors might sound exotic, but they were as much a part of winter survival as your kaftan. In Ottoman culture, sharing food was a social ritual, especially in winter when people gathered indoors. Communal meals warmed not just the body but also the spirit, reinforcing bonds across the sprawling empire. Imagine sitting cross-legged with others, passing around bowls and sharing stories by firelight. Historians still argue whether certain winter dishes originated purely within Ottoman borders or were adaptations of recipes from conquered lands like Persia or the Balkans. The culinary influences are as diverse as the empire itself, making the Ottoman winter menu a mosaic of tastes. A fun aside, some cooks believed that hot peppers, though not native to the region, were magical in winter meals because they chased away the cold spirits. Whether true or not, a bit of chili certainly made things interesting on the tongue. Food also played a role beyond nutrition. Special winter sweets like lokum Turkish delight were often made with warming spices and nuts, enjoyed not only for pleasure, but as gifts during the colder months, part of the social fabric as much as the wardrobe. With your appetite whetted and your senses tingling, you're ready to move from the warmth of the kitchen back outside to explore how Ottoman winter clothing blended utility with fashion in the bustling streets and markets. You step back outside, the crisp winter air biting at your cheeks again, but this time you're watching the lively streets of Istanbul come alive under a blanket of snow. Ottoman winter fashion wasn't just for the palace or military elite. It flourished in the bazaars and markets where merchants, artisans, and everyday city dwellers navigated the cold with style and savvy. Walking down narrow alleys, you see layers upon layers of fabric, colors muted, but rich deep blues, warm ochres, and earthy greens woven into thick woolen shawls and scarves. Everyone bundles up, but there's an art to it. A merchant wraps a heavy wool yelman, a broad shawl around his shoulders, its fringes swaying as he haggles over spices. You can almost smell the mix of leather wool and the faint scent of smoked fish from nearby stalls. A quirky detail: Ottoman scarves sometimes doubled as pockets or small storage solutions, long, narrow, and sturdy enough to wrap not just around your neck, but also to tuck in coins or small goods as you moved through the bustling crowd. It was winter fashion meets practicality streetwise Ottoman style. Women's winter attire adds another layer of intrigue. They wore velvet or silk cloaks lined with fur or padded with quilted cotton for warmth. You notice intricate embroidery at the hems, sometimes in gold thread, or colorful silks, an unexpected splash of color in the gray winter. The cloaks could be fastened with silver clasps shaped like flowers or animals, blending function and adornment effortlessly. Historians still argue whether certain street styles came directly from Ottoman court fashions or developed independently among commoners and merchants. The lines blur as trends trickle down or up from the elite, creating a dynamic fashion ecosystem. A fun fact: some street vendors sold handmade felt boots right on the spot, custom fitted in minutes, so city folk could swap out wet footwear instantly. The hustle of winter commerce was as much about warmth as it was about survival. As you weave through the crowd, you realize Ottoman winter fashion is a living, breathing thing, practical but poetic, reflecting the empire's vast cultural mosaic. And while the cold nips at your nose, you can't help but admire how warmth and style dance together in every layer. Next, you'll learn about the lesser-known winter accessories that completed the Ottoman look, from gloves to hand warmers, and how these tiny details kept the cold at bay with surprising ingenuity. You pull your gloves snug over your fingers, feeling the soft leather warm instantly in the chill air. Ottoman winter accessories, though often overlooked, were vital to surviving the cold, and just like everything else in this empire, they combined utility with a touch of style. Gloves were commonly made from deerskin or goat leather, supple yet durable. Some were lined with wool or even silk, providing a layer of insulation that kept fingers nimble despite the frost. The rich wore gloves embroidered with delicate patterns, sometimes studded with tiny gems or metal beads, turning a simple necessity into a subtle status symbol. An unexpected detail: some Ottoman gloves had small detachable fur linings that could be swapped out or washed a bit like modern modular clothing. This made them last longer through the harsh winters, and those liners sometimes carried scents like rosewater or sandalwood to keep the wearer's hands smelling pleasant even after a day's hard work. Hand warmers or kellums were also popular. These were small cloth pouches filled with heated stones, herbs, or hot water tied to your belt or tucked inside your sleeves. Imagine pulling out one of these magical packets, cupping it between your hands and feeling the gentle heat thaw the biting cold. Some versions were lined with silver or embroidered silk to retain warmth better, turning a humble tool into a little luxury. A quirky fact: in some regions of the Ottoman Empire, people used a sort of mini glove filled with fragrant herbs and spices, which was warmed up and held close to the chest or face during winter. Not only did it provide warmth, but it also served as an early form of aromatherapy, believed to fend off illnesses that winter brought. Historians still argue whether these accessories were widespread across all social classes or primarily a luxury of the wealthy elite. Archaeological finds suggest that while common folk had simpler versions, the intricacy and materials varied widely, reflecting status and regional differences. Another accessory you might not expect: embroidered face veils or masks lined with soft fabrics designed to shield the nose and cheeks from biting winds. These weren't just practical, they added a mysterious allure to winter attire, hinting at personal style even when much of the face was hidden. You realize that in the Ottoman winter wardrobe, no detail was too small to be overlooked or unembellished. Gloves, hand warmers, and scarves all played their part, transforming the harsh season into an opportunity for creativity and comfort. Next, you'll discover how Ottoman artisans created the textiles that made these winter garments possible, spinning, dyeing, and weaving with ancient techniques that kept the empire clothed through many a cold season. You settle beside a spinning wheel, watching threads of wool twist and turn, ready to become the fabric of an Ottoman winter. The art of textile making was more than craft. It was a sacred tradition woven into the empire's very identity, especially when the cold months demanded warmth and durability. Imagine the soft hum of looms in dimly lit workshops, the rhythmic clacking punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter or song. Spinners and weavers, often women working from home or in guilds, produce thick woolens, cozy cottons, and luxurious silks, each fabric designed for specific winter needs. Historically, the Ottoman textile industry was renowned across continents. Cities like Bursa and Istanbul became centers for producing fine wool and silk textiles, which were prized not only locally, but also throughout Europe and Asia. Ottoman silk in particular was considered a luxury fabric often dyed in rich hues, using natural sources like madder root for reds and indigo for blues. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Ottoman weavers used tiny silver threads woven into the fabric to create patterns that shimmered subtly in candlelight. This technique wasn't just for beauty. It was believed that silver threads could ward off evil spirits, a blend of superstition and style you might find fascinating. The dyeing process was equally intricate. Natural dyes extracted from plants, insects, and minerals required careful preparation. Women often mixed dyes in secret recipes passed down through generations, and some dyers guarded their formulas jealously, akin to a secret family recipe for the perfect winter stew. Historians still argue whether the Ottomans inherited many textile techniques from the Byzantines or developed their own distinct methods. The blending of cultures makes it tricky to pin down exact origins, but it's clear that the empire's textile craftsmanship was exceptional. Another interesting fact: Ottoman winter fabrics often featured quilted layers or padded linings sewn between layers of cloth for extra warmth. This technique improved insulation without adding excessive bulk, perfect for maintaining the sleek silhouette favored by Ottoman fashion. As you run your fingers over a finished piece, a soft, thick wool embroidered with tiny geometric patterns, you can almost feel the warmth that awaited the wearer on a chilly winter's day. The fabric isn't just material, it's history. You can touch a legacy of artisans who knew that surviving winter was as much about skill as it was about resilience. Next, you'll slip into the daily winter routines of Ottoman citizens, seeing how their clothing choices shifted from dawn to dusk and how they adapted to the changing cold. You wake to the soft gray light of an Ottoman winter morning. The air is crisp but not biting, and the rhythm of daily life unfolds like clockwork, layer by layer, garment by garment. Winter clothing wasn't just about slapping on a coat and calling it a day. It was a carefully orchestrated ritual that changed as the sun moved across the sky. Morning begins with the wrapping of a thick woolen jubba, a long overcoat lined with fur or padded cotton that protects against the early chill. You pull your shalvar, baggy trousers made from wool or heavy cotton over your legs, allowing ease of movement while keeping the cold out. Footwear is equally important. Thick leather boots, sometimes stuffed with straw or felt, keep your feet warm on icy streets. Throughout the day, your clothing adapts. Indoors, especially in heated spaces like bathhouses or palace chambers, you shed the heavier layers to reveal finer silks and embroidered tunics underneath, allowing your body to breathe while still maintaining a sense of dignity and status. Outside again, layers go back on like puzzle pieces carefully fitted to keep drafts at bay without restricting your steps. A quirky fact: Ottoman winter hats weren't just practical, but also had secret compartments for storing small items like coins, medicines, or even tiny notes. You could call it the 16th century equivalent of a winter hoodie pocket. Hats varied widely from tall felt birks to fur-lined caps, each signaling regional styles or social rank. Historians still argue whether layering was influenced more by practical necessity or by the symbolic desire to display wealth and sophistication. Some scholars suggest that the art of layering was a way to show off multiple expensive fabrics, simultaneously turning winter dressing into a fashion statement as well as survival. In marketplaces, vendors adapted too. Some offered specially made winter cloaks that could be easily removed or added depending on temperature swings, sort of early convertible outerwear. You'd see merchants exchanging advice on which combinations worked best for navigating the sometimes unpredictable Istanbul weather. As the afternoon fades, you notice the subtle shift from practical winter wear to attire suited for social gatherings and evening prayers. Silks become more visible, embroidered details catch candlelight, and the careful placement of fur trims adds both warmth and elegance. Winter in the Ottoman Empire wasn't merely endured. It was lived with clothing that adapted fluidly to each hour and occasion. And as dusk falls, the layers settle in place, once again ready to shield you from the dropping temperature and carry you through the night. Next, you'll delve into how the Ottoman military adapted winter wear for campaigns blending functionality with the empire's characteristic flair. You find yourself in the muddy, snow-dusted camps of the Ottoman army during winter campaigns, a world far from the palatial warmth and bustling bazaars. Here, winter clothing transforms into a matter of survival on the move, where every garment must work overtime to keep the cold from freezing your bones. Ottoman soldiers wore layered tunics made of wool or thick cotton, often padded or quilted beneath their armor. Over these, they draped heavy cloaks called kepeniks, shepherd-like coats made from felt or wool, sometimes reinforced with leather patches for durability. These cloaks were versatile, heavy enough to block wind and rain, yet light enough for swift movement on horseback. One practical piece you might not expect: soldiers sometimes wore a type of padded leather gloves lined with goat hair, providing warmth while maintaining dexterity for archery or swordplay. After all, you can't shoot arrows or wield a scimitar with frozen fingers. Trust me, it's not as heroic as it sounds. A quirky detail: some soldiers stuffed their hats or sleeves with aromatic herbs, believed to ward off illnesses common in winter camps like thyme or mint. Whether it helped or just masked the less than pleasant smells of camp life is up for debate, but it's a fascinating glimpse into the mingling of medicine and superstition. Historians still argue whether Ottoman winter military clothing was standardized across units or heavily influenced by local traditions and the resources available in different regions. Evidence suggests that elite janissaries might have had access to finer, better insulated garments, while provincial troops made do with simpler gear. Another fun fact: horses were also bundled up in woolen blankets, sometimes embroidered with symbols of rank or protection. Considering the importance of cavalry to Ottoman warfare, keeping these valuable animals warm and healthy was crucial. Winter campaigns were notoriously brutal. Soldiers relied on their clothing not only to fend off frostbite, but also to maintain morale. Wearing the distinctive, practical, yet stylish Ottoman winter military attire created a sense of unity and pride even in the harshest conditions. Next, you'll explore the Ottoman winter festivals and how seasonal clothing played a role in these celebrations, blending warmth with joyous pageantry. You step into the vibrant chaos of an Ottoman winter festival, where the cold air is filled with laughter, music, and the rich scent of roasting chestnuts. Here, fashion isn't just about staying warm. It's a statement, a celebration, a way to shine despite the chill. Festival goers don their most elaborate winter coats, often velvet or heavy silk, richly embroidered with gold thread and trimmed with soft fur. Colors that might seem too bold for daily wear, crimson, royal purple, emerald green, burst forth, transforming the gray winter landscape into a tapestry of life. You notice that many cloaks feature intricate motifs: tulips, pomegranates, and geometric patterns that carry symbolic meaning, weaving the wearer into the cultural fabric of the empire. A quirky tidbit: some winter festival accessories included tiny bells sewn into the hems of coats or hats, jingling softly with every movement. This wasn't just for show. There's a belief that the jingling sound could scare off evil spirits or bad luck during the coldest months. Women often wrapped themselves in shawls dyed with special winter pigments, colors that wouldn't fade easily, despite exposure to snow and rain. Some even wore ornate headpieces lined with fur, decorated with semi-precious stones that caught the festival lights like tiny stars. The contrast between the cold air and the warmth of these decorations created an enchanting, almost magical effect. Historians still argue how much of these festive fashions trickled down from the imperial court versus evolving independently among different communities. The blending of urban and rural styles, of elite and common, makes it hard to pinpoint origins. But that mix is precisely what made Ottoman winter festival fashion so dynamic. Another fun fact: winter festivals often featured textile markets selling limited edition fabrics and garments, creating a temporary boom in artisan crafts. Some families planned their wardrobes around these festivals, saving money for months to afford a new winter cloak or shawl to wear for the celebrations. As the night deepens, lanterns flicker on the snow-covered streets, reflecting off the rich fabrics and sparkling accessories. The cold is forgotten, replaced by the warmth of shared culture and the beauty of winter fashion at its most festive. Next, you'll glide toward the final reflections on how Ottoman winter fashion continues to inspire modern designers and cultural celebrations today. You trace your fingers along the soft fabric of a modern coat inspired by Ottoman winter wear, feeling the echoes of centuries past woven into each stitch. The empire's surprisingly cozy winter fashion hasn't just faded into history, it's alive, inspiring designers and cultural celebrations alike in the 21st century. In today's Turkey and beyond, you'll find runway collections featuring fur-lined collars, embroidered velvet, and rich jewel-toned silks reminiscent of Ottoman styles. Designers mix traditional motifs with contemporary cuts, creating garments that honor the past while embracing modern tastes. It's like wearing history but with a smartphone in your pocket. A curious tidbit, some artisans still use centuries-old techniques, natural dyeing, hand embroidery, and quilted layering in small workshops that feel like time capsules. These craftspeople are fiercely proud of their heritage, often teaching younger generations to keep the skills alive despite industrialization. Modern cultural festivals also pay homage to Ottoman winter fashion. In Istanbul's winter bazaars and heritage events, locals dress in period-inspired attire, celebrating their ancestors' resilience and style. This living tradition creates a bridge between past and present, warm coats connecting cold days across centuries. Historians still argue how much contemporary fashion genuinely reflects historical accuracy versus romanticized interpretations. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, with a delightful dash of artistic license. After all, fashion is as much about storytelling as it is about fabric. Another fun fact, some modern winter garments include hidden pockets or detachable linings, a direct nod to Ottoman multifunctional clothing. It's proof that the past can teach us practical lessons, not just aesthetic ones. As you pull your coat tighter against a cool evening breeze, you realize Ottoman winter fashion was more than clothing. It was a complex dance of art, culture, function, and identity. And that legacy, wrapped in warmth and elegance, continues to cloak those who appreciate it today. Now let's slow down together, let the story's warmth settle in, and drift gently toward a restful night.